There are two main types of two main types of two main types of interview. Hi, I'm Layla. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit different from the other ones I've been doing because I realised it was winter, which in my head now has connotations of medical school interviews because the last 2 years I have been stressing and preparing for them. But now I've got my spot and I'm here to pass on a bit of wisdom. So if that's the kind of thing that you want to see more of, the next few videos are going to be dedicated to the kind of missteps along the way for me, what I've learned the hard way, the easy way, and kind of just helping you through it. So I'm going to be talking about preparing for the MMIs, the kind of more difficult questions that you're likely to be asked at medical school interviews, and all that kind of good, really bad stuff. So anyway, let's get right into it. So today's video, I just want to talk about kind of the initial points that you need to know before you start preparing for your medical school interview. And it's really quite basic, so if you, like me, are a serial researcher and you already have spent countless hours of your life looking up different types of interviews, different interview questions that you might be asked, all that kind of thing. Sorry if you can hear a rumbling in the background, that is a plane flying overhead. Yes, thank you Gatwick. Oh no, that's a helicopter. Anyway, this is actually attempt number 2 at this video because for some reason I don't know how to use my camera. It's still a learning process, but basically it just went out of focus like 5 minutes into the video, and when I was sitting editing it I was thinking it's gonna go back into focus at some point. Half an hour into editing I was like, oh no, it's actually just staying like that forever. So let's hope this one's in focus. So before you apply to medical school, you've probably got an idea of what types of interviews the medical schools you're applying for use, or hopefully you do. Basically 2 main types of interview, and they are kind of the more traditional type, which is a panel interview, and there's the MMIs. MMIs. MMI stands for multiple mini interview, which is exactly what it sounds like, but I'll just go into them in a bit more detail because there is a bit of a difference in terms of the mindset that you should have before you go into it. Obviously your mindset is going to be, I'm going to get this place at medical school, but in terms of kind of how you approach it, it's a bit different. So a panel interview is normally you at a table with 2 or 3 people on the other end, probably not at a table this year to be honest, probably over Zoom or Teams or Google Hangouts or Skype, but they will basically ask you questions and you'll have a designated amount of time at that table for you to answer them. And it's kind of very much like an interview for any job, only in a medical school context. Shocking, I know. The MMIs are normally around 7, 8, sometimes more stations, and normally they'll have kind of a mixture of different things at all the stations. So at some of them, you'll be talking like a normal interview, they'll ask questions, you'll answer. At others, they'll have like tasks for you to do, maybe like, I heard one about Dundee and it was like a really bizarre like drawing thing and something else, I don't know, like to test manual dexterity. I actually have no idea what the purpose of it might have been, but I just remember hearing about it and thinking like, what? If you thought the UCAT was bizarre, like but no, most of them will make sense. Some are even roleplay ones where you're interacting with an actor or someone from the medical school, quite often medical students, and kind of playing out a scenario. So you'll find out what the scenario is and then you'll just be expected to kind of go. But there are kind of pros and cons to MMIs and traditional interviews, and I think they kind of are the opposites for each other. So what is a pro for one is the con of the other and vice versa. But I think that you can frame it however you want in your mind, and that's kind of what I want to press on in this video, is that you could think of MMIs as kind of really rushed at each station, or you could think of it as, well, at least if one station doesn't go so well, then I've got an opportunity to improve in the next one. Traditional interviews, you've got the benefit of having a longer amount of time to make that really important first impression with the interviewers. Whereas with the MMIs, it doesn't matter as much your first impression in one station because it's only one station out of however many, and you just need to do well in the majority of them to hopefully get a place. Well, obviously depending on who's kind of applying that year. Another thing about the panel interview is that normally when you go into an MMI, you're like a bit stressed. It takes you like a minute or so to kind of settle into it, whereas if you've got a longer interview time, which tends to be the case with panel interviews, you've got more time to settle into it, and then you can be a bit more relaxed and focused and kind of be more eloquent with your answer. Whereas MMIs, it's so short and fast and like ripping off the band-aid big time, and the time honestly just goes. I don't know where it goes. It had a curfew. But yes, I think traditional interviews I only had one of over the 2 application processes, and that actually ended up being the one that I'm going to next year. I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but it ended up being a bit like an MMI because there were 2 stations. So one was a kind of situational, how would you deal with this situation? It wasn't a role play, but it was like a role play minus the actor. And then the other was just kind of like an interview as if you're talking to just anyone. And I've had so many interviews in my lifetime. I'm sure not everyone has. It just depends on kind of where you're coming from, but I'm a graduate and I've had jobs all through uni, and then I had a job after uni when I applied that round. So I've done so many interviews, and yeah, I think that format just worked better for me. But I've got to say, MMIs are fun. Like, the adrenaline's just pumping. You come out of one, you're like, okay, what's next? And you go to the next one and you read it and you're like, ah, okay. And then you're just thrown into the deep end, and it's kind of chaotic, but also you surprise yourself under pressure like that. So I think just be excited for whatever interviews you've managed to bag. Congratulate yourself because it's no mean feat. And yes, stick around. So like and subscribe if you could do with knowing more about these. I'm planning my next few videos to be kind of around the topic of medical school interviews. If I can help one person, I'll be delighted. And yeah, all the best with your prep, and I'll see you in the next one.